So based off these concerns that you just mentioned, I want to go into a topic which I'm sure then the listeners will naturally then ask, valuation. Right? So obviously I know it's not possible to just do valuation like
I
this
love that,
off
man.
the cuff, but do you have some rough numbers back of the napkin? Is it possible to walk us through a little bit of how do you value TSMC given that it's fallen close to 40% from the highs, right? 100-ish to now about 60-ish, if I'm not wrong. Is it 60, 70 you
Yep.
were mentioning just now?
Yep.
So yeah, how does one value TSMC?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can look at it from two different angles, right? One, you can look at it from a dividend stock point of view. So a dividend stock point of view, meaning I look at it from a dividend yield and I see historically how high or how low the dividend yield has traded.
Okay.
So that's one way to look at it. Right now, TSMC, it's at its sort of historically high dividend yields, close to about 3 plus to 4%.
Because of the drop in the price, right?
Exactly.
So
So
for
that's
my
one
users
way.
to kind of recap, sorry, the dividend yield is basically the amount of dividends they pay divided by the stock price, because the stock price is what you would buy the stock for. So the higher the dividend yield, generally it means that the stock price has came down. Is that how they see it?
Yes.
So it's now at a historical high dividend yield based on its average. Okay, so if based off this valuation simple shortcut methodology, it is considered, I don't want to give any hints here whatsoever, but it's above its average dividend yield.
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
understood.
So that's
Okay.
one way to look at it. Another way is, of course, to look at it from a multiple standpoint. Multiple meaning you look at it from, say, a PE,
Yeah, PE.
or price to earnings or price to book.
Okay.
PE is one way to look at it. And right now, I think it sits at, close to about 10 to 13 times price to earnings.
Okay.
Historically, for many of these semiconductor players, they tend to trade much higher. I think maybe about close to 20.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. So the historic multiple for this semicon industry is about 15 to 20, or is it?
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's about 15 to 20 times. Again, it really depends on where the cycle is. But on average, if you smooth out all the cycles over the past 15 to 20 years, I think 15 to 20 times is just, where I think the average is. And where the share price is trading now, I think it's healthy discount from, where
So right
they
now it's
historically
about 10 to
traded.
13 you were mentioning.
10 to 13.
Okay.
That's based on past 12 months of their profits.
Okay.
But if you're expecting their profits to grow, this PE is right now roughly about 10 times, which is really, really cheap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, really, really cheap.
Really,
okay.
really cheap.
Disclaimer, this is not financial advice. Everything is purely for entertainment purposes only. Just kidding. All right, so can you share like the peers that you're using when you say the historically is 15 to 20? Who are the peers or the companies that you're using for this multiple? Yeah.
So I use Intel, Samsung, Saudi Semiconductor, but
But
of course,
some of these, their product lines are not that clean cut, right? Like you mentioned. Yeah.
so like what you pointed out for TSMC, because they are pure play versus,
Yeah.
you have, for example, Intel, Samsung, they also have other business segments.
Yes.
So it might not be the best comparison. So price to earnings might not, reflect that full accuracy of how you value that company. But I guess, in the whole semiconductor space, sometimes it's good to actually know where you stand in terms of all these businesses, right? I might not get a full picture, but at least I know that TSMC, in its own regards, they are considered cheap. Of course, if you don't sort of buy that valuation idea, another way is to actually calculate how much cash flow, how much money or profits TSMC could potentially produce over the next 15 and 20 years. And then you just discount it back
Yeah.
to
The
today's
present.
value. And
Okay.
you can see that, TSMC, again, they are valued way more than what the share price is trading right now.
Okay, got it. Okay, last question. So now I think to kind of recap, we know that TSMC, based on its historical dividend yield, is at its highest, based on or above average, and based on its PE historical yield is also below average of the 15, 20 times multiple. So question is, why should someone not own TSMC?
I think number one is like I've mentioned, it's the whole industry. I think right now it's actually struggling to meet their revenue targets and their profit target because there is actually an oversupply issue here. People are sort of cutting back on buying electronic devices. So that could be the risk which people might not like and they might not feel comfortable because semiconductor industry, again, it's a very cyclical industry and people don't generally like this kind of huge ups and downs in an industry cycle. So, they might not feel comfortable owning TSMC, which is fine, right? Some people can't take the cycle, but if you are interested and if you think that I can do okay and I'm comfortable sitting in this cycle, this ups and downs, then I think this is one interesting stock to actually watch out.
So you must be used to the cyclical nature of it, and number two, also the geopolitical tensions and volatility that comes inherent with this domain.
Yeah.
because of TSMC controlling pretty much the whole world's supply chain of chips.
And I'll tell you something, Max. The thing about investing in like stocks like TSMC, right, is because their shares are usually affected by geopolitical tensions.
Yes.
And yes, sometimes there's absolutely nothing to do with the fundamentals.
Yes.
It makes it even more interesting because if we are bottom-up
okay.
investors,
Okay.
we tend to pay attention to the business itself.
Yeah.
right?
So it's a buying opportunity based on that. Yeah.
And if you think about it again, if we are not investors but business owners, every day you walk in, say, into an Apple shop, people are always queuing up for all these devices. People still need all this. And, in terms of the whole idea of technology revolution, more and more people are going to be using their smartphones, mobile devices, and all these, again, boils back down to the need for making very, very small chips.
Okay. So what you're saying is also is the circular trend is still going to be trending, and it's still a trend that's structurally and it's not just temporary.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you very much. So yes, Willie, thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you,
thoughts on
Max.
TSMC. You've been amazing. Anywhere else that the viewers can find you to understand more about your work or the in-depth research that you do?
Yeah. So if you're interested in investing, you can always find me on my blog at dividendtitan.com. So I write plenty of articles there. You can join my newsletter. It's free. So it's dividendtitan.com. And yep,
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you very much, Willie. And of course, thank you, Kunat, for tuning into this episode of TSMC. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Max.